Hello and welcome to the College Rugby Show. I'm your host, Pat Clifton. This is going to be home for all hot takes, highlights, rankings, hot topics, all things college rugby. We've got a great show planned for you. We've got the voices of Friday Night Rugby, John Broker, Thomas Wheels Grant, and Wendy Young, as well as the queen of college rugby, NCR Women's Director, Angela Smarto. We're going to talk rankings, who's overrated, who's underrated, a program profile on the Kansas Jayhawks, the collegiate pathway to the pros, and much more. But first, let's go straight to the College Rugby Show Top 5 highlight. Kicking it off here, we have number 5. This is Wisconsin in red against Purdue Boilermakers there in black, and that's the wing Callum Jones from Hudson, Wisconsin, dotting down the senior business major. And here we've got the St. Louis rivalry with SLU, the Billikens fly half Adam Gerholtz slipping past a couple of Wash U Bears on his way to the tri-zone, and he puts it down. And we're back here to Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, and we've got Joseph Koch, the outside center. A little bit of a mistake there from the Boilermakers, but Johnny on the spot was Koch to dot it down. And Gage Curry with the show and go to get right through that Tennessee Volunteer line and score for the Kentucky Wildcats. A number 1 highlight, Marcus Jansen Van Vuren, the storming number 8 from Paarl, South Africa, slams it over on the Belmont Abbey team right there. The Crusaders going down to Walsh on Friday Night Rugby. There is your Friday Night Rugby top 5 tries through the first 4 weeks. Expect to see a lot more women's action coming up as we have Texas A&M starting our women's run of games here on Friday Night Rugby. But next, we are going to dive into all of our divisions, all of our rankings. We got Smarto, we got Wendy Young. Come right back as we get into those rankings. What an exciting moment. We've got our first ever expert panel here on the College Rugby Show. I am joined by Wendy Young, one of our voices of Friday Night Rugby and a longtime rugby journalist. And of course, Angela Smarto, NCR Women's Director. And I'm going to try to make this stick, the queen of college rugby. What we're going to do here in this segment is we're going to chop up the top 10s of each division, cruise through those, talk about who's moved, who's gone up, who's gone down. At the end of that, me and Wendy are going to maybe give you a little bit of insight into who we think might be a little overrated or a little underrated. So why don't we kick it over here to Smarto? Why don't you start with Division I, Smarto? Tell us who has a chance to unseat Michigan, who's going for their third straight national championship here.
Yeah, Michigan certainly has a really big target on their back, and the closest to the bullseye right now is Wheeling University, coming out really hot, still undefeated as a first-year program. They got a lot of good recruits as freshmen and from other schools. Coach Ken Pape is leading them, and they very much have their eyes set on gold. Southern Nazarene also coming in really hot, another new recruiting class. They've had difficulty making it past the first round. They keep playing Michigan in the first round, but with new seedings this year, they think they have an easier path, but I think this is going to be the toughest regional championships we've seen so far. Virginia just popped into the top 10 for the first time this season. They are still leading in the South, and it's hard to bet against the Cavaliers. Nobody has played more college playoff rugby probably on this list than Virginia women's rugby. But making a name for themselves in D1, we have St. Bonaventure, who passed the test. They started this year with some big blowouts of some lower division teams, but they beat Walsh University 17-15 over the weekend, really placing themselves in that upper tier of NCR college women's teams. So as always, going also for a three-peat is going to be the Eau Claire Blue Golds. They are dominating in league play, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So with some restructuring of playoffs, hopefully we'll see some more competitive games from them. But I do believe they should still return to Houston. They're very strong core. Their coaches have been there for 10 plus years. So I think that they have a very good chance to return. We also have on the East Coast, so much talent condensed into a very, very small area. So we have Vassar College, who's been a D2 historic champion, and they're looking for their first gold with NCR. But Coast Guard put up a huge number over the weekend, beating Roger Williams 52-0, which was really surprising, I think, for a lot of people, seeing with Roger Williams having other really competitive scores against good teams. I actually think that Coast Guard at number 3 right now is still underrated. I think that they could be pushing into that 2, possibly number 1 slot. Yeah, we're going to have the first ever Division III champion now that we've moved away from the small college nomenclature. And it's going to be somebody new now that last year's champion has moved up, who are still in the conversation. So what's really been interesting about D3 is that we've been having different number 1s every week because it's so tight. And as scores come in, people keep changing their minds and aren't really sure. So right now, sitting on top is UW, Wisconsin Platteville. They're last year's second place team who really put the pressure on Bonaventure, didn't quite make it through, but made themselves a real threat to win again. We have Wayne State College is back on the map. They had a coaching change last year and some culture changes, but now they're firmly under Bryn Shivers, who is certainly no stranger to college women's rugby, who's been doing it longer than I believe all of us have been alive. But we're good friends, so I can make that joke. And I'm excited to see the Wildcats return to what Wayne State college rugby is kind of all about.
Thank you for that expert rundown. Wendy, when you look at those different top 10s there, any teams stick out to you that you think could be ranked higher?
Yeah, I think the one that's probably the most underrated, and that, it's kind of like Great British Bake Off. It's my job to talk about the team that's the most underrated this week, and they're not getting cut from the show, but I think they've got a chance here. It's D3 SUNY Plattsburgh. They're 4-0, and they sit behind Clarkson, and they're only tied for second because of point differential. So they're barely ranked in any of the rankings, and they're in one of the best conferences in the country, Upstate New York Championship East, and they have less name recognition in the area, but man, they are not getting the recognition they deserve, and I think they're ready to take a challenge and try to get on that top ranking.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I will put my black hat on here and be the bad guy. And, if I got to pick one team, I'm looking in Women's Division I in Colorado Mesa that I think might be slightly overrated at number 11. They are 2-0, but it's against two teams that they usually are beating, against two teams that are 22-7-1 against all time. And the wins were pretty close, right? They gave up 17 points to Utah State. That's unusually close for that game, more than they conceded against the Aggies in the 3 previous games combined. So that just says to me that maybe Colorado Mesa, while they're first in the High Peaks League, maybe the High Peaks still has a little bit to prove as a conference. And then, lastly, I think they've overturned quite a bit of seniors last year, and I know they're relying on quite a few first-year players. And as you get later into the season, into the playoffs, that could really come up and kind of bite you as they hit that freshman wall or that first-year wall, if you will. So that is our digging up the dirt on our women's divisions across the table. When we come back, we will have John Broker and we will have Thomas Wheels Grant, our men's experts, and we'll dive into the exact same thing with the men. And welcome back. It's time to dig up some dirt on the men's divisions. I've got 2 esteemed collegiate rugby experts here to join me and do just that. Of course, you've got to know them as the voices of Friday Night Rugby over the last 4 weeks. That is none other than John Broker and Thomas Wheels Grant. JB, you've heard him through your earwaves for years now calling college rugby. Same with Wheels. Wheels also serves as the academy director for the New England Free Jacks, helps us run our college tournament up there, the CRC qualifier. So these guys know college rugby inside and out, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about. In Division I, we know we're going to have a new champion because Notre Dame College no longer exists. Division II, IUP looks like the behemoths. And then in small college, is this Wayne State's year to finally do something? In Division I AA, can anybody topple Kentucky? JB, take it away. Tell us how things are moving and shaking in the rankings across divisions.
So we'll start with Division I. You're going to see across all the divisions, we're in a little bit of a strength of schedule, finding things out still, period. It's going to become much clearer in the next couple of weeks. Brown is still there at D1. But when you get in there, St. Bonnie's and Wheeling swap up near the top. AIC jumps up 1. We'll talk about this in a minute. Indiana down 2. Thomas More up 2. So everything's kind of up in 2. But I think the thing to key on is when I was talking about strength of schedule, like AIC went up one position, but they're going to play Brown this weekend. And that's going to be a major indicator in the Liberty Conference of who the top teams are, because they both put up some pretty strong scores so far. D1A, a bit the same. The top 3 are going to stay the same, but then there's some movement. UMass is up 2. They've been a very strong team. Yale's down 1. URI drops 3 on a loss to Yale after UMass beat Yale in that division. South Carolina. So I think, again, you're seeing sort of, the strength of schedule. South Carolina in D1 AA drops 4 places as that conference is really kind of, you're finding your way through it. You're seeing who the strong teams are. The top three remain the same in D2 as well, right? So the strong teams from last year, they've carried right through, and they're still the strong teams now. And there's 1 or 2 place movement for teams like Marist, Memphis, Grand Valley State. Big drop from 4 to 7 for Montana State. Big drop from Villanova from 8 to 15. Unranked Loyola Chicago has joined the list in Division 2. Division 3, Babson and Wayne State, they swap at the top. They were the finals last year. Babson came away with it. We talked about Wayne State. They're a phenomenal team. This is going to continue to be a battle. Catholic's up to 3. Slippery Rock goes down to 4. 2 unranked teams, Bryant and Springfield, join the rankings for Division 3.
That's great, John. Thanks for those breakdowns there across the divisions. Of course, there's a ton of results with 4 divisions, right? In National Collegiate Rugby, you've got over 650 teams, men and women, playing across 4 divisions on the men's side, 3 on the women's side in 15s. And that's a ton of results to track. And now let's kick it over to Wheels here. Is there anybody that out of that group, out of those listings, out of those rankings, any division that kind of sticks out to you as underrated, that maybe, is being overlooked and should be potentially higher up?
Wisconsin. I'm a Badgers fan. The University of Wisconsin. I've had the pleasure of calling them on Friday Night Rugby this year. And one thing that jumped out to me, currently ranked 14th, and they're 4-0. So for me, that's one thing that really stuck out off the bat. But I really like the way this team plays. I think on both sides of the ball, they've got a really good defensive system that everyone's educated on, and they seem to be all connected. And then on the other side of the ball, their attack has a lot of fluidity to it. They play with 2 different layers of attack, so they can attack out wide and attack through the seams in the middle. And particularly, I think Callum Jones, their left wing, has been one of the best finishers I've seen this year in the short amount of collegiate games on Friday Night Rugby. I think he scored a hat-trick in the game they played against Purdue, and fantastic finishing ability there.
Now let me play the bad guy, all right? You got to play the good cop. I'll play bad cop and tell you the team that I think might be slightly overrated. And I'm going to go Division 1 men as well here, and I'm going to go with the Principia Thunder Chickens. They're sitting there at number 8. They're 2-0, right? It's early on. That's not a lot of games so far. That might be one of the reasons. They don't have a ton of games under their belt. They've got an early win against Lindenwood. Lindenwood is a great program. Huge numbers there, over 60 players in the program every single year. It's tough to tell what side you're getting, right? I don't think that was probably the Lions' first and a half 15. So I think that win can be a little bit deceiving. That the other one was against Marion. It was a squeaker, a 1-score game. And, really Principia, they're really only rostering about 22 a game. They don't have a large roster, unlike some of these other varsity programs that have a lot of international flair and talent. Principia doesn't have a huge training squad, and that hurts them later in the season. And now we've got a little program profile here. Last weekend, the Kansas Jayhawks Rugby Club enjoyed their 60th celebration. I was there on hand, caught some sights and sounds, talked to a few people, snapped a few highlights. So just to give you a little bit of a look into one I think is one of the cooler venues in all of college rugby, the Westwick Rugby Complex and the Kansas Jayhawks. Let's kick it right now and throw it to that program profile. Carved out of a cornfield on the banks of the Wakarusa River is a rugby oasis. The Westwick Rugby Complex is home to the Kansas Jayhawks Rugby Football Club, which celebrated its 60th anniversary last weekend by renewing a Civil War-era rivalry with the Missouri Tigers.
Our club started going overseas on tours in 1976, and we saw what the clubs were like over there in the clubhouses, and we figured if the Brits could make something after 100 years, we could do something because we were American. My name is Rick Renfro, and I'm with the Kansas Jayhawk Rugby Football Club. 22 years ago, we bought this property, 50 acres. It was 4 or 5 alumni, and then the club has contributed money. We put in over $1.2 million to turn it from a cornfield into 2 full-size rugby pitches, but it's really provided a sense of continuity for the team and for everybody else.
More than 400 spectators, hand-counted by Renfro himself, took in Kansas' 47-0 victory. Mizzou fly half Logan Lair was exceptional in defeat, and number 8 Hunter Wheatcamp had some spirited carries, but the Jayhawk defensive line proved too much. Here's a hard-charging run from sophomore flanker Connor Sexton, a rising star out of Kansas City's Rockhurst High School. As a ball carrier, he gave the Tigers fits all day. Wing Eli Diddy also left an impression with some striking runs. Senior number 8, Andrew Augustine, got in on the fun too. Here's an attacking lineout taken by another Kansas City sophomore, Trace Esslinger, as the Jayhawks set up the driving maul and freshman hooker Ashton Pohl squirts out the side for a try. Despite the lopsided scoreline, it was a picturesque day at one of college rugby's most magical venues, made possible by Kansas Rugby's remarkable alumni, who plowed down a cornfield and erected a pitch of their dreams. Over years, they built it, and Saturday, the people came, thanks in large part to folks like Renfro, a Lawrence legend. He bought a humble watering hole at Johnny's Tavern at 21 years old in 1978 with rugby teammate Doug Hassick. 46 years and 13 locations later, Johnny's is one of Lawrence and Kansas City's most beloved dining institutions, and still home to the Jayhawks Rugby Club.
Putting rugby aside, it comes down to its alumni, its membership, its culture. But that all comes from all the back of house stuff, like all of this stuff that goes on behind the scenes. A very powerful group of people that drive that culture, and he's been consistent for the last 50 years with the club. He is just a rugby man. He doesn't care about the scoreboard. He just cares about the culture, and that's what drives it, mate.
Well, let's dive in now and talk a little bit about high performance, right? What is college rugby's role? Really, it's to enrich the lives of students while building really healthy community and valuable relationships that will last a lifetime, like, you know, those alumni at KU or the alumni at any of the institutions that have their own fields. But there's no doubt that a significant chunk of those in college rugby, players, fans, coaches even, are thinking about championships and honors, right? Becoming an All-American, winning a championship. They're thinking about post-grad playing opportunities like Major League Rugby, like Women's Elite Rugby or PR7s. They're thinking about making national teams or age grade teams.
Pat, we can transition into now as junior gaffer, and what a season that man has had. I think I'm one of the founding members of the junior gaffer fan club. I remember catching wind of this kid out of Brown University. He's a football cross-code talent, and Coach Dave Laflamme recommended that I come down and have a look at him. I was just blown away by his physicality on both sides of the ball, his work with ball in hand to beat defenders and barge his way through and make gain line. And then some of the hits he was putting in on the defensive side of things were just absolutely bone-rattling. And I think when Junior got drafted at number 23 by the Free Jacks, I was certainly surprised. I thought he'd go a lot lower than that, but it was an absolute steal for us. And obviously he jumped over him for that developmental time, and he has proved to make just such a wonderful impact. And I don't think there was any question that Junior would physically be ready for MLR. I think it was more his skill level and maybe his game IQ, but I think the most surprising thing he's been able to jump into a fully professional competition and make an impact that he has in his first year. A little bit.
Well, one of those guys picked ahead of Junior was Rick Rose, who was picked number 1 overall. You called a number of his games there, John, at St. Bonaventure. Tell us about him and what do you think about his prospects as a pro and going number 1 overall? I mean, that's a pretty big deal for the Bonnies program.
But Rick Rose, 6'7", played in the Cleveland Rugby Academy. That is something a very athletic player just showed for the Bonnies so often. It's great to see people really just jump up to the next level and be that number 1 pick. I think he's got a really bright future.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate that chat. We are now going to discuss this topic with the women and really focus on the Olympics and kick it over to Smarto and Wendy. Look at the women's high performance pathway, and it's not quite as clear as the men. That Major League Rugby layer that has really illuminated it and really kind of Americanized it, made it easy to understand, hasn't existed with the women until now, Women's Elite Rugby, which is coming up. But let's look at the Olympic team, because it was obviously such a huge summer for the Olympic team, and obviously the women winning bronze and taking the headlines, rightfully so. So let's look at the Collegiate Rugby Championship. That is now the NCR Sevens National Championship run at the end of April. It is going into its 15th ever rendition. So it's been around for a long time. For all intents and purposes, it started college sevens. So we stretch back to that, and we can look at this most recent Olympic team in Paris that did so fantastic for the women.
Yeah, it is a little bit different, and I think that pathway will become a little bit more solidified once the Women's Elite Rugby, the WER, kicks off in 2025. But I think you have to look at that Legacy Cup final where we had Rika Koulibaly, an Iowa grad. She's on the CRC Dream Team, and then she moves over to Colorado and starts playing with the Grey Wolves and then wins herself a championship. And it's just the epic way to do it. And, she's got to have her name on Siona Fukafuka's sheet, maybe Emily Bidwell's sheet as well, being looked at with the national team. So there's a possible pathway for her there. But of course, college players going to the WPL is no It's always happened. It's going to continue to happen. And I think there's a really cool, unique opportunity with the declaration period being open. And then another one that's a really cool example is Olivia Leatherman. She earned her spot on the national team in front row, and she did that at her senior year at Notre Dame College. And now she's in Canada in the WXV1. They've got one more game to go. They'll face Ireland this weekend, and she has been just phenomenal for them, and we're happy to see her on that roster.
All right, we're going to put 30 seconds on the clock here as me and Smarto roll through our wins and losses on this week's show. All right, for me, my win is going to be the NCR All-American Tour, the time-honored tradition of finding the best college rugby players in the country, taking them overseas and pitting them against international competition is back this summer as NCR took 32 players from 20 schools, 8 conferences, and 15 states to France on the 100-year anniversary of the USA winning the 1924 Paris Olympics, and they went 3-0, defeating the Belgian U23s and 2 French sides. What's not to like? Now, to cue it up for my losses, beating 30 seconds, that's incredible. My loss this week is Chris Christopherson. Yeah, I think he's most well known for being a Hollywood star, an actor, and singer-songwriter. I'm going to quickly read you this excerpt from Sports Illustrated from 1958. This dashing young man in the rugby outfit plays standoff on the team at Pomona College in California, where he is senior. But this is only a small facet of the 21-year-old Chris Christopherson's amazing record. He is also a starting left in on the varsity football team, a Golden Glove boxer, and the editor of the college paper. R.I.P. Chris Christopherson. Now over to Smarto. Let's put 30 seconds on the clock. What's your win?
My win right now for this week is women's rugby in general in America. We are riding a huge wave of momentum coming off the bronze medal win at the Paris Olympics. We've been hearing this story for years and years that we're the sleeping giant. Actually, it's a sleeping beauty because the only women's rugby players that people know in America are women. Alana Marr, Dancing with the Stars. Sammy Sullivan is Twitch recording herself live putting together Legos. Ariana Gabriel is advocating for healthcare reform. So pretty much everything that's being done right now is advocating for women in general and more women's sports memorabilia. Get your Spiff Cedric trading cards today.
I actually would love some of those. So if you know where I can, please send me a link. And what's your loss, Smarto?
My loss is nostalgic, but I don't miss it at all, is pool play at the CRCs. Cascading brackets forever. Every game matters. We are never doing pool play again. So stop asking and stop sending emails. The best team has to win, which means you have to win every game. There's no warm-up. There's no point differential. It doesn't matter. You have to play to win for 14 minutes, 4 times in a row. If you can do that, you can win gold.
I love it. I love it. Sevens has to have consequences. Upsets with consequences. Well, now we are going to throw it on over and talk about some of the players to watch this season, men's and women's side, all divisions. Who are some of the best players in the country as we tee up early candidates for the College Rugby Show, the College Rugby Show's Players of the Year. All right. College football has the Heisman, and college rugby now has the College Rugby Show Player of the Year. So we're going to start our way too early watch list by just naming a couple of players here, each that we think are teams, are people you need to look out for the rest of the season for the men's Player of the Year. I'll throw my 2 out first. I'm going to start with Cone Webb, the fly half for Iowa Central, the Titans. I think that Cone is a fantastic player. Reminds me a little bit of Finn Russell, the Scottish fly half that was on the Netflix documentary Full Contact. Plays a bit to the beat of his own drum, but has the skill set, the rugby IQ to do it. Can go off script, can play on script. He is a really fantastic, creative player, and he's really stood out to me for Iowa Central, and I think he's a fantastic player. It usually captains them quite often on the Saturdays, and a team to look out for as we get into the meat, or player to look out for as we get into the meat of the Big River season. And the other one is Gentry Stack, staying in the state of Iowa. Gentry Stack from Northern Iowa, Division II player, coming back multiple-time All-American, can play all over the back line. I think probably projects to play as a center, potentially in the outside backs as the wings, and if he goes on to a pro level. This guy is lightning. There isn't anything he can't do. Can turn a game on its head all by himself. How about you, John Broker? Who's standing out to you? Who are the guys you want us to watch this season?
If you look at University of Kentucky, they played Friday Night Rugby. Holden Hahn was playing for them. Holden Hahn is a Charlotte native. He's played high school rugby. He was the MVP of the D1 AA championship team last year. He's playing in the USA age grade system as a flanker. Just tremendous all over the place, around the ball all the time. And I think that higher level experience is benefiting Kentucky as a whole. In Division I in the Rugby East, a very tough Rugby East conference, we're looking at Aiden Smith from Kutztown. Aiden Smith plays scrum half, can play other positions. He is leading Rugby East with 6 tries this season so far. So he has jumped out ahead of the pack. He's a very aggressive player, always ready to run the ball, always a threat, whether he's getting the ball to somebody else or taking it on himself. A Connecticut-born player, another player, a family of rugby players, played in high school, certainly being looked at there as a junior at Kutztown now, but he's really cut his teeth and is really a big part of that program. So watch out for Aiden Smith.
Yeah, that's right. Aiden Smith. It's not often you see a scrum half lead a competition in tries, but he's like the Antoine Dupont of the Rugby East, if you will. He does more than just sling those passes out to the fly half. How about you, Wheels? Who's standing out to you? Who are the guys that you think that the whole country should keep their eyes on?
Well, sticking with the most important position in rugby union, that is scrum half, as we all know. For me, number 9 out at Walsh University, Remy, the little Frenchman. He, for me, is everything you want from your number 9. He has a solid running game. His distribution is accurate and smooth. And I remember watching him a couple of weeks ago against Belmont Abbey, a Friday night rugby game. And Johnny B, we called that one, and he really just broke that game open. Remy went on the NCR All-Americans trip to France as well, and I was just super impressed with the way he carries himself on and off the field. So he's 9. Then Johnny B, I'm stealing your thunder. I'm going for number 5 out of Babson College, Bryce Muller. I know you taught him everything he knows about the game of rugby. This, for me, is one player to watch out for. He was recently named in that USA age grade team over to Scotland and played some fixtures there.
All right, let's dive right in here to some early candidates for Player of the Year. Any division goes. Let's talk about it. Wendy, who are your early candidates, the 2 players that everybody needs to keep their eye on as we are midway through the fall rugby season?
Yeah, as a former scrum half, I had to pick a scrum half, of course, and so I picked D2 Sophia Bailey, junior at Vassar College, 2023 All-American. She's got fantastic footwork, breakaway speed, especially from that scrum half position. She's not afraid to snipe around the base of that ruck and get some action there, and she's definitely going to be an impact player for the Brewers and look to lead them to an undefeated season. The second one has got to be D1 Katie Gall, a senior fly half at Michigan, and she's a 2023 All-American. It's the second time. She's a 2-time national champion and master of the helm to lead the Wolverines. It's going to be a tough road for them all the way to Houston, but Gale looks to be firing on all cylinders and leading her veterans and rookies looking towards a three-peat.
Someone's got to take over as the captain of that program, the face of that program from Ember Larson, and it might as well be Katie Gale. Smarto, who do you got? Who are the 2 players that you think everybody should know?
All right, so we are going to start up in the East at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. We have Amanda Konecki, who is a monster All-American center for the Bears. Whether she's on attack or on defense, she is just an absolute force and a very dynamic player that's important to their team scheme. Last year, they made it to 3rd place, which is good, but not good enough. And after putting up some big wins already so far this year, I think Amanda hopes to take the Bears all the way this year. Looking at D3, we have Selena Bodadine, who is a senior at UW-Platteville, also an All-American leading from number 8. So crucial position, both on attack and on defense. This is a team who's already extremely physical. Nobody's played a team from Wisconsin that isn't physical. So if you are leading that physicality, you know that you are tough as nails. So I'm looking out for Selena, who's going to ride them out through regionals, hoping to get their team back into nationals and looking to be a new D3 champion.
Those are a lot of great names to keep your tabs on. We are going to now kick it over and just make some predictions because the Longhorns and the Aggies are getting ready to kick off this game. So let's go pick by pick here. Smarto, who do you think has this one? Texas A&M, Texas, the first women's Friday night rugby game of the season. Who you got?
Well, just looking at this game, which is always a fun one, and there's always an element of surprise, but I'm going to say Hook'em, and I'm going to go with the home team of University of Texas.
All right, Wendy, what do you think? This is I know obviously it's a close to heart, close to home for you as a Texan. This rivalry is one that you probably have to talk about at the dinner table.
Yeah, I'm not a Texan. Don't put that on me. I'm a Sooner, so I got OU in my back pocket. But my wife is an Aggie. She's coached the Aggies. My wife and I both coached UT. We actually coached Chris. So this is a tough one, but I'm going to have to go with Texas as well. I'm going to put on my tiny little Texas logo and go with them because I think they're going to take this one.
Aggies, Longhorns, getting ready to kick off. This was your first ever episode of the College Rugby Show. Thank you to John Broker, to Thomas Wheels Grant, to the lovely and talented Angela Smarto and Wendy Young, and behind the scenes, Ryan Ginty. Guys, come and check us out. We will be back on your airwaves very soon. Stay tuned to the College Rugby Show.